Israel's cabinet deliberated for 7 hours. 7 hours Israel's cabinet deliberated on the ceasefire deal. All right, well, a warm welcome to friends and enemies and those of you still deciding. Very glad you've dropped by this week for our Israel Frontlines update. My name is Bishop Robert Stearns. I've been traveling in and out of Israel and the greater Middle East for the past 32 years. And so I do my best to bring a perspective of someone who is not a politician, not military personnel. I am a spiritual pilgrim who has had the privilege of being friends with Jews, Muslims, Arabs, Christians, all kinds of people throughout the greater Middle East, and especially in the Holy Land. And so I attempt to be a bridge to bring communication, information, updates to us to make sense of what is a very, very important part of our world. If you are new to this report, let me just say to you that I am just so utterly convinced that what happens in the Holy Land, in particular in the city of Jerusalem, has an outsized impact, a far greater impact than we can imagine, that is felt really all around the world. And so I just invite you to become educated. I invite you to educate yourself. My promise to you is that I am, to the best of my ability, providing firsthand, prayerful, thought out, researched input as we get from being there on the ground. I just came back about 6 weeks ago. I'm getting ready to go again, leading a group of 34 very influential pastors. We're going to be heading there in just a couple of weeks. And so we try to keep our finger on the pulse of what is happening in Israel and the greater Middle East. If it's your first time, I invite you to subscribe. I invite you to join, to like, to share, all the things. And by all means, get involved with what it means to be a watchman on the wall, to be one who keeps an eye trained on Israel and what is happening there. We're going to start our conversation about Israel in Tennessee. I was in Tennessee last week. I was in Nashville actually just a few days before this happened. But in Tennessee this week, at the Gordon Jewish Community Center, a man disguised as a rabbi attempted to infiltrate the community center. He disguised himself as a rabbi. He was caught. He then told the police that he was just pulling a prank. However, allegedly, after they researched his background check, he allegedly is a member of the neo-Nazi Goyim Defense League. And so this is just indicative of what our Jewish friends deal with on a constant basis. I was talking to a Jewish leader today. They are participating in Solidarity Sunday. We invite you to participate. But the first words out of my Jewish friend's mouth in response was, well, can I ask, how is there going to be security present? Will there be sufficient security for me and my family to feel safe? Folks, it is a tragic day in America and of all places in Tennessee, when this is what our Jewish friends, our Jewish neighbors have to ask. No law-abiding, well-meaning citizen of this nation should feel unsafe. I don't care what your creed, your background, your religion, your politics, a law-abiding citizen. If you are a person of goodwill, you can have robust opinions, robust differences, but you should be able to feel safe in your home. And so this is just a little bit of what was happening in Tennessee. Now here's some good news from the ADL and from Wikipedia. Found and took action against 6 editors. And again, Wikipedia is this very unusual kind of information source where it's, as I understand it, it's open source. And so on one hand, it's an incredible resource because it's a never-ending compendium of knowledge. But on the other hand, there is, generally speaking, very little monitoring about what gets up there. It's I guess I would say it's self-monitored from within the Wikipedia ecosystem. Anyway, Wikipedia took disciplinary action against at least 6 editors in the wake of massive efforts to spread misinformation and hate across the platform. So deliberate spreading of misinformation regarding Israel, regarding the Jewish people. Jonathan Greenblatt, the head of the ADL, said, it is now imperative for Wikipedia to begin work to undo the harm that these rogue but prolific editors have wreaked havoc with across the platform. And so that's some good news, that there is some cleanup happening in the online space. And let's pray that that continues. Now, here is, of course, the huge news. We have begun to see the release of the hostages. After an unbelievable 471 days of captivity, 3 female Israeli hostages were released. They were brought back home. Of course, one of them you saw maybe on the news. 2 of her fingers were lost in the midst of the captivity. But there was unbelievable rejoicing throughout the land of Israel as these hostages were released, as the beginning of this ceasefire. Now, of course, at the same time, Israel exchanged 90 Palestinian prisoners. So there were 90 Palestinian prisoners. These were prisoners who had been arrested in terms of either suspicion of or active terrorist activity. Nevertheless, Israel released these 90 Palestinian prisoners. Also, as a part of this, but 900 trucks of humanitarian aid were released into Gaza. And this is reported not by Israel, but by the UN. Okay, so Israel reported it, but the UN corroborated it. 900 aid trucks released into Gaza. And that, of course, is incredible news that we're starting to see the hope of some kind of ceasefire settling in. There's a lot of holding of our breath that still needs to happen. There still are, I think, 94 hostages who are still in captivity. These hostages are being released in stages, with Israel returning their part of the ceasefire bargain, but we are beginning to see this happen. So this is the ongoing reality that we've got right now in the Middle East. We have the potential of a brand new Middle East. We have hopefully a ceasefire that will hold in Gaza. We have a U.S. leadership that is giving very strong global leadership around the world. And we've got, as I've been telling you over the past several weeks, most importantly, a Saudi Arabia that is beginning to turn its heart and its mind and its future toward moderation and toward more hopeful stances on Israel and the continuance and the flourishing of the Jewish state. So we've got to keep our eyes open on what the next several weeks look like. There is every likelihood that nefarious characters will test President Trump's resolve in the first few weeks or months of him being in office. And this is where we need to focus our prayers. This is where we need to focus our attention. Anytime there are leadership transitions of a significant measure in a geopolitical level, you're going to have enemies begin to push back one way or the other to test the resolve of the new administration. And so we're going to see, I would not surprise me if we see these kinds of activities testing Trump's leadership, and of course, Bibi's leadership continuing right now in a very precarious position because of all that he's going through in terms of maintaining the coalition. Israel's cabinet deliberated for 7 hours. 7 hours Israel's cabinet deliberated on the ceasefire deal. And at the end, the vote, I don't have it in front of me, but it was something like 24-8. And why do I bring that to our attention? Because Israel is accused regularly, right, of being this dictator state and this, lack of democratic process and, et cetera, et cetera. Well, here you have a government, after 471 days, they're debating 7 hours about the deal. Bibi and the ruling coalition allow that debate to go on for 7 hours. And then at the end, there's enough pluralism that 8 vote against the deal. Folks, that's the sign of a robust democracy. That is the sign of a representative government. So whatever accusations you want to hurl, you've got to back them up with facts. And Israel, while not a perfect nation, by the way, there are no perfect nations. There are no perfect nations. There are no perfect people. While Israel is not a perfect nation, Israel does strive to maintain the best, highest practices found in democracies within their borders. Freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of dissent. All of these kinds of things that we take for granted in the West, Israel robustly practices in the midst of a Middle East where those kinds of democratic principles may be given lip service to, but rarely find reality. Thank you for dropping by this week. Hit the forward button, the share button, the like button. Make a decision today to get educated and connected to what's happening in Israel, in God's holy land. Join me at eagleswings.org. If you want to donate today, eagleswings.org/donate. Make a difference, get involved. I'll see you next week on the Israel Frontlines Update.